Are you missing out on those quick and easy chicken dinners? You know, the ones that call for rotisserie chicken or pre-cooked chicken? Well, this bag of flour is the answer to your problems. We're going to turn this flour into a vegetarian chicken substitute that's good for everything from tacos to casseroles. And the best part about it is it's cheap and there's only one ingredient, unless you count water. I'm going to use 8 cups of this flour because I want to make a large batch, because if I'm going to the trouble to make something homemade, I want to have enough in the freezer to last for several meals. But feel free to half the recipe or double it if you need to. I'm making mine in my stand mixer, but you can easily do this by hand. I'm going to go ahead and add in my water, and we're going to let this mix until it makes a nice dough, and we're going to knead it for about 5 to 10 minutes. If you don't have a mixer like mine, you can easily knead it on the countertop just like you would bread. And you'll want to knead it for about 5 or 10 minutes because you want to develop all of that gluten and make it nice and stretchy. All right, it looks like our dough is done. It's 8 cups is about all that this mixer can handle. After I take it out of my mixer, I'm just going to put it on the countertop and knead it for a few minutes to go ahead and stretch out that gluten a little bit more. And then I want to form it into a nice tight ball. And this is where the recipe gets interesting. We are going to soak this dough in water for about 10 minutes to an hour. I know that sounds strange. I thought it was crazy too when I learned this recipe 25 years ago, but it definitely works. I'm just going to pour water right over the top of this so that it can soak. And while that's soaking, we can go start some laundry or read a book, whatever we want. We're back. I hope you had a good break. It's time for us to start washing our dough. We want to wash away all the starch, so all that we have left is the protein or the gluten. This is the secret to a mock chicken that is light and fluffy and not doughy. Yes, the primary ingredient in this recipe is gluten. But unless you're gluten intolerant, gluten is not bad for you. But this just has one ingredient, not like some of those processed meats that you find at the grocery store. You see how the water here is cloudy? We're going to keep washing this until it is almost clear. It may seem a little strange, but trust the process. When I first learned this recipe about 25 years ago, I had just turned vegan and I was at a loss for what to eat. What I ended up doing is eating oatmeal most of the time because I was used to eating frozen dinners and frozen burritos and frozen pizza, and I couldn't do that anymore because those weren't available at the grocery store. So I had to come up with some recipes, and a lady from church invited me over and showed me how to make this, and it was a game changer. I learned how to substitute out unhealthy foods for healthy foods, and I was able to just look at regular recipes and make them the way I wanted them. What I didn't know back then was these ladies and these recipes that they were teaching me were from the American Blue Zone, or the longest living culture in America. These people are living 10 years longer than the average American because of the way they eat and their lifestyle. So when I learned all of that, I was so excited, and that's when I wrote my first cookbook, and that's why I started this YouTube channel, so I can help you eat healthier and live longer. So if that sounds good to you, I would love it if you would subscribe to my channel and click the notification bell so you don't miss any of the good recipes. As you can see, our gluten is starting to get a little shaggy and the water's running a little more clear. So this is about the texture we're looking for. And we are going to let it rest one more time for about 10 minutes. While the gluten rests, we want to make a nice flavorful broth for it to cook it in so that it has a lot of good flavor. I'm going to use some Bragg's liquid aminos, some chicken style bouillon, some poultry seasoning, but you can get creative here if you want. You can add your favorite herbs and spices. I like to keep it kind of simple so I can season it up to match the recipe I'm making. You can even add some veggies to the broth for a nice vegetable broth like onions and carrots and celery. We're going to bring that to a simmer and we'll be ready for the next step. It's time to transfer the lava dough into a great vegetarian chicken with a nice realistic texture. To do that, we need to cut this into 2 pieces because I made a double batch. And we are going to stretch out each piece to make a long, skinny-ish rope. This stretches out and makes the fibers longer and feel a little bit more like a meat texture. Once we do that, I'm going to slice that into two, and I'm just going to wrap this around each other until it makes a rope. And I'm going to tie this rope into to make a nice rope. Now I'm going to go ahead and tie that into knots. And each of these knots, we want to make it as tight as possible because we don't want it to expand too much when we cook it, because that will change the texture. So let's tie this into lots of knots. And tuck that last piece right under so it makes a nice tight bundle. Now the ladies that I learned this recipe from sometimes wrapped theirs in a cheesecloth and tied it tight so that it wouldn't expand. But if you have a nice tight knot, you don't need to do that. So let's do the other one. I just want to show you what this is going to look like if I do wrap it in cheesecloth and the different texture you get. Now we just need to drop this right into the simmering liquid. We're going to let that simmer for about an hour. The seasoned broth will infuse this gluten with lots of really great flavors. Through the magic of video, our gluten is cooked, and we're going to turn that heat off. And you're going to get the best texture if it's completely cooled before you use it. So I like to just take my whole pan once it's cooled off and stick it in the refrigerator overnight, and then I can shred it or chop it or slice it, and it's ready to use in recipes. Our gluten has been chilling in the refrigerator overnight, and now we're going to see what it looks like. I know it doesn't look real pretty right now, but the magic is about to happen. So let's get this one out, and I'm going to show you the difference between the one that we wrapped in cheesecloth and the one that we did not. We just need to unwrap our little bundle, and then you can see that it's a little smoother textured on the outside, and it's also a little denser textured because it was held together tightly by the cheesecloth. I'm just going to use my fingers to shred up this one that I did not wrap in cheesecloth. You can see how easily it shreds up and how much it resembles a shredded chicken or a rotisserie chicken that you might buy at the store once it's all shredded. It has a great texture when you're eating it. Has a really mild flavor, so you can flavor it up to go into so many different recipes. You can spice it up for tacos, or you can throw it into a casserole or make it into a soup. So it's got so many different uses, and it makes it easier when you're making that transition to a plant-based diet to be able to just swap out some of the meat products for some of these non-meat products. Now the one that we wrapped in cheesecloth, you can see it's a little smoother around the edges. You don't see all of the crevices and things. This is how I would make it if I wanted to do slices or chunks, because you can see it's much denser in texture and easier to slice. Just look how great this looks and the different textures you can get just with this one recipe. You can eat it just like this, or you can add it to just about any recipe you want. You can cook it up in a pan and brown it, then add some sauce or some other seasoning. You could also dice it up and put a breading on it and put it in your air fryer. It's only got one ingredient. It'll help you make your transition to a plant-based diet a little easier. I saw this great recipe that had thousands of reviews with 5 stars. It was a chicken and rice soup on the New York Times cooking page, so I think I'm going to try to make that with this gluten. If you want to see me cook that, then check out this recipe right here.